Hello and welcome back to the Substandard Model. As you may be able to tell or not be able to tell, we are recording video for this episode, which is new for us. And so if anything's slightly dodgy, that's why we're still working things out. This episode is called The Catcher in the Rye.
Which is because, well, mainly because we talk about rye at some point. But I think it works quite nicely because The Catcher in the Rye is a great book if you haven't read it. And its main character, Holden Caulfield, is like a young guy who's on the brink of adulthood. And that's like one of the themes, adulthood. And about like, it can be scary to move from being a child to being an adult. We draw a parallel with, bear with us here, with society at large. Our society likes to think of itself as advanced beyond the constraints of biology, you know.
And I will say, we will talk about later how we're not as developed or, I guess, moved away from our past as we had thought. But we're first going to begin with a conversation about wheat.
I realized this is possibly the least sexy topic we've ever done.
As in gory, as in like big.
No.
I mean, we've done a really depressing climate change series.
It's basically like I tried to describe it to myself, and I don't think it's not snappy, but it's interesting.
Brilliant. Shall we get started then?
I want you to tell me what you've eaten today. Let's start here. This is relatable content.
Okay, so I've had some Aldi sourdough with some mozzarella and some tomatoes, which is pretty fancy meal.
I have to. I mean, you struck gold.
Situation.
You struck gold. I don't have to dig any further here. My point is made. But continue.
And then I had an oven pizza for dinner,
mm-hmm.
and that's been my day really of eating. Apart from some snack crisps.
Yep.
And I had a Pepsi from the fridge when I got in.
All right. Cool. Okay. So there's something that all of your meals, apart from the Pepsi, have in common.
Bread, carbohydrates, starch,
no. Yeah,
sugar.
but like think more basic. Think what do we owe the bread to? And the pizza too.
What do we owe the bread to? Italy, yeah. Italian people. Rome.
Welcome to our episode on Italian people. It's wheat. Yeah. I'm trying to say wheat.
Wheat.
Yeah, wheat. Uh-huh.
And this was from bread for wheat, and as we know in Minecraft, there's 3 wheat for bread, right?
Oof, big claim. I don't know that for a fact. We should definitely check that. 3 wheat for a bread. That's pretty. I mean, no, probably not.
Okay, so what do I know about wheat?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, wheat is like for the most important thing in your life. I know that it's the most important thing in my life too. So if you're listening, it's yours too as well.
So one of those things that sort of soft times create weak men who also don't know what wheat is. You know,
wheat creates
hard times.
Wheat creates strong men. Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men who don't know what wheat is, and then weak men ruin the wheat.
Wheat creates strong men. Wheat creates weak times.
First tier of the pyramid you don't see often is wheat creates strong men.
How
did the strong men get there to begin with? Because like that system doesn't work. Like when did someone had to start being a strong man? It's chicken and the egg with strong and weak men in that. I always say this, but the wheat is the chicken.
So you're saying weak men are equally as important to the system because weak men create hard times and hard times create strong men.
And strong men create wheat men.
I'm doing my part as a weak man.
Hard times.
Exactly.
But wheat is the dominant species on the planet, without a doubt.
Wheat.
You work for wheat. You're a slave to wheat. I'm a slave to wheat.
Wheat is a slave to me, surely, if I'm eating wheat 24/7.
It's not true. If you're like, think of wheat as a human body, you are a white blood cell. This is biologically analogous. You work for wheat. Your job is to make sure that wheat has the perfect conditions so it can survive and reproduce. And humans have been doing this for tens of thousands of years. Yes, we call it farming. The wheat call it the greatest heist ever known to biology.
We call it evolution masterclass, the final stage. Actually, you're kind of right. If we created if there was a species out there, it's sort of symbiosis final level, really, isn't it? It's
true, but it's almost like I feel like it goes beyond symbiosis because wheat used to just be a boring old grass. Then it hijacked an entire species to basically get rid of all of its competitors, give it infinite resources, as much as it could possibly need, pour fertilizer out of every orifice onto it, breed it and make it by far the most like successful. Like it covers a significant portion of the planet that it lives on. Like if you look at the planet from, an alien's point of view and an alien was looking with a telescope, it would be like, I'm seeing a lot of wheat here, boys. This is we better do the Duolingo wheat.
Yeah, wheat spectroscopy.
Some basic wheat. Yeah, exactly. They do the turn on the spectrometer and it's just wheat. The one spike for wheat that goes way up. And like, whoa,
yeah.
This planet.
What percentage of as the esteemed researcher that you are, Sam, for these podcasts, and I know the effort that goes into these. What percentage of the global landmass is wheat?
Global landmass. What do you mean?
Or global,
all
what percent
all
of
the
the
mass?
Earth's surface is wheat? No, in terms of surface coverage.
Okay, not global landmass. Surface coverage is wheat. Well, so, okay, that's not fair because the sea is like a big one. So probably like, at least we're talking max, best case scenario, 30%, which is already
So
like not ideal. It's not impressive. Already, it's not impressive.
Sea, beach, wheat.
Yeah. Basically, that's what our world is. It goes from the sea to the beach to mostly wheat. If it's not wheat, it's cattle and stuff. And occasionally it's like, I don't know, cities. Like, then it's Coventry, and then it's wheat again. And then it's wheat for a while. And then maybe it's like Bicester, and then it's wheat again, you know? It's just basically wheat. Like wheat, rounding up, it's just wheat. Land is wheat, synonymous with wheat. Like Catan really underestimates the domination of wheat. Like
So-
it's not evenly spread between wheat and ore, I don't feel.
And mining and fishing and so on. Catan is a very
wheat is like
diverse game.
you can characterize the human diet as wheat, and you wouldn't be wrong.
So
It's
that's a big problem. If I remember back to our climate change episode with something called multiple breadbasket failure, where as we have a extremely undiversified food market, essentially, where vast swathes of it are wheat, corn, and what is it? Can't remember the third or fourth one.
rice. It's a big
Rice, and I wanted to say maize, but I already said corn. Maize is the better term.
Well, yeah, I suppose.
Soy is the other one. And because we haven't diversified that market, if we have any sort of significant, let's say, pandemic kind of situation where wheat dies for whatever reason one year, then actually we have a severe food crisis very, very quickly. And in that episode, we found out that the global food stockpile for sort of reserves of food would last the world population sort of 2 months-ish was about how long before people will just start starving unless we found more food in the meantime.
Yeah, it's a very scary thing. But this is something I've got a lot of things to talk about wheat and farming and the impact of that on culture and some quite interesting stuff. And also biologically speaking, what it means to basically like dedicate hundreds of thousands of hours of another species' time into creating the perfect circumstances for one species. What other parts of biology take advantage of that, and like how the wheat itself has kind of changed and become redundant in so many ways. And it's just a very interesting case study in biology because it doesn't really happen very often.
That is extremely interesting.
We've done something really weird here. We've really put all our points in one skill tree, and biology doesn't really know what to do. And some interesting stuff has kind of happened because it has been a long time since we've been farming. We've been farming for a long, long time. You know, that's long enough for interesting stuff to happen.
Yeah, it's sort of interesting looking at evolution on that side of things, where instead of looking at it from a perspective of evolving and learning to do things that are required or necessary, you look at it from the other side and say, actually, very quickly at the same rate, you lose the ability to do things that are no longer necessary for you to do. And this was, I think, the backing for the evolutionary argument for aging, not to take us on a tangent here, but with aging, they couldn't find an explanation for why animals would evolve to age. And this was, I think, was way back with the dinosaurs when that sort of mechanism for aging came about. And it was just because the statistical chance that you will live long enough to see the kinds of diseases and things that would only occur to an animal after a very, very long time period is much lower. And so there's less evolutionary pressure to prepare yourself against things like Alzheimer's or, cancer and stuff like that. And so naturally, when you get to a certain age, you actually don't have any defenses for dealing with those kinds of things. And so you die later on. And that's where and you evolve towards that because you get very good at dealing with, the evolutionary pressure to deal with things which happen in your first few years is high. So you get very good at getting through that first zone, apart from humans giving birth, which is awful. But, after that period, it starts falling away and you become sort of evolutionary vulnerable.
Yeah, but also sexual maturity is hugely important there. Like after an organism is no longer sexually mature, there is no evolution acting on it whatsoever. Like if you had a gene where like 5 seconds after all your sperm died, you exploded. If that was a gene you had, that gene would never evolve out of your lineage because there'd be no way for it to. It wouldn't affect the number of kids you have.
That's a good point.
After sexual maturity ends, then that's when a lot of senility and senile, like aging and stuff like that kicks in. Because who cares? Like you've had all the kids you're going to have. Your fitness has been determined now.
That's such a good explanation. It reminds me of that guy who ran in the London Marathon last week with a fridge on his back because his mum has a genetic trait, which means that she developed Alzheimer's in her late 30s and 40s, and then she died before she was around 50, I think. And he realized that he had the same genetic disorder which would cause this kind of early onset Alzheimer's. So he did this run to support that cause and draw attention to it with this fridge on his back. But that's a case study of this where that gene won't come out of the gene pool because it only affects you when you're 40.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're 40, you've already had your kids. And so the gene's passed on already, and so on and so forth all the way down the line.
Exactly. Yeah, it's an interesting one. But I want to get back to something you said about like breadbasket failure and stuff like that. I'm going to talk about this now, even though I was going to talk about it later, because I found something in my research. Have you ever heard of the Green Revolution?
Green Revolution? Is this what's currently happening in British politics, or?
No, God, I wish. No. This happened like in the 60s, and I'm kind of annoyed I hadn't heard about it because it's an amazing thing that happened. I mean, we did a huge podcast about like a downer podcast, about how we're going to run out of food. And I don't want to dissuade from that. That is my general feelings on the matter of food and food security. But an interesting thing that happened in the 60s, which you can research, but I don't know, it's really not something that is culturally known about and talked about as much as it should be. In the 60s, basically, globally, people were really struggling. Subsistence farmers were really struggling. Fertilizers were getting less and less effective. And people in certain countries were working 10 times harder for 10 times less food than in other countries. There really wasn't a lot of spread of information about farming techniques and technologies and stuff like that. It was really very, very unequal. And farming was hugely inefficient across a large portion of the world. And some scientists first noticed this in Mexico, actually. Mexico is known as like the birthplace of this movement, but it was global by the end of its lifespan. And basically a small collection of scientists. The one who gets talked about a lot is a guy called Norman Borlaug. But also,
big up my Normans around the world.
Yeah, but you've never heard of him, right?
Well, not with a name like Norman.
Right. It's probably that they did it. But he has the Nobel Peace Prize. He has a Presidential Medal of Freedom. He's renowned in scientific circles as a hero, and he probably saved about 1 billion lives.
So that should warrant international fame.
Yeah, he's a complete. I mean, I hadn't researched his personal life, but his scientific career, I don't want to say he's a complete legend and then get completely owned, but from his impacts, from his work, has been absolutely extraordinary. And also a huge team of people that helped. Basically, it was just this like multidisciplinary incentive and multidisciplinary like sort of program and effort and initiative to like breed better strains of wheat and, deal with like weeding techniques and create better pesticides that were more sustainable in the long term. But the strains of wheat that were being developed is really a big thing. Like there's this one advancement, a guy called Yuan Longping in China, who also is like a huge deal in the rice version of this. Well, but this happened at the same time. So in China, he's like a national hero. Everyone knows about Yuan Longping, but we don't know about our version, I guess. But then, so there's this gene called Neurin-10, which was used around this time, which is this gene that was stuck into wheat. It was basically found in like a lab in Korea. Sorry, it was found in a lab in Japan, actually. And then it was like taken up by China. And then, because China's a huge wheat producer. Not a lot of people know this, but like, you know what the top 5 wheat producing countries on the planet are, Henry?
I feel like the Netherlands is in there just because.
Whoa,
I know
what
the
a swing!
Netherlands.
Top 5 in the whole planet is the Netherlands.
Well, I know the Netherlands is just unbelievable for agriculture. They've got no justification for it. But I don't know. I don't know.
Small,
I might sound like a complete idiot, and they're like
no, because like weirdly, you're not far off. Like number 5. Number 5 is a big shock. Like the top 4 are like expected, but not that expected. But number 5, I was like, what really? But it's not the Netherlands. But
America,
it's similar.
The US.
US is number 3.
US is number 3. For
Sorry,
wheat
4,
farming.
Actually. Sometimes 3.
It's 4th. For wheat farming.
Yeah, between 3 and 4.
Is.
But it's the obvious ones, but it's also not the obvious ones.
China.
Yeah.
I don't want to say Russia, because I feel like a lot of that's not arable. But
Russia's 3.
Mm-hmm. China's in there as well. So it's China,
China's
America,
number
Russia
1.
done.
China's number 1 by a huge margin. Number 2, you're forgetting an obvious one.
Brazil.
India.
Australia. Huh?
India,
yeah.
But people think these cultures that eat rice, but they produce like 3 times as much wheat as the US or Canada or whatever, like way more wheat.
Oh, really?
There's huge areas that grow just wheat in China. I don't think people realize that. But
why
also,
don't we see? I mean, do we see that in the cuisine of those places? Is it?
There's a lot of, I mean, there's a lot of bread in China. There's a huge amount of bread. I mean, like there's certain parts of Chinese cuisine has like become more known as Chinese cuisine because it was like around like Hong Kong and ports and stuff that then became known as Chinese food. But like a huge part of the country of China, if you went there and asked for like chicken chow mein, they'd be like, what are you talking about? You might as well be asking for it. Like it's not considered, China has a lot of people in a lot of different places.
Yeah.
And a lot of them farm wheat. But number 5 is cool. Guess what number 5 is? I don't think
You said
will,
close
ever.
to, so I'm just going to name places around number 5.
Yeah.
It's Europe.
It is Europe.
Is it for wheat?
For wheat, yeah. 5th in the world.
Netherlands would have been my first guess. After Netherlands.
Would have been a good guess.
Germany, Poland, Ukraine, France.
I said
France is number 5 in
France.
world wheat production.
After China, India, Russia, and USA, and then France. No. But back to Neuron 10. I want to talk about why Neuron 10 was such an important gene to introduce into wheat strains. Now, over 70% of wheat strains have Neuron 10 in it, which is like loads. I mean, most wheat you eat probably
70%.
has this one gene in it. But what do you think Neuron 10 does on a fundamental level to a wheat plant? And why has that saved the day? We basically just to reinstate this, like over the course of 10, 20 years, we basically like quadrupled the amount of wheat and the amount of food in general that we were producing for the same amount of land. You can see a graph, which we'll pull up now, I guess, where it's like a line of land used for agriculture and then food gotten from agriculture. Graph. That's going like that. It's astounding how impressive it is, But anyway, did you have a question about it?
My question was, so you said that we were headed towards disaster. Is that just because our population was growing massively and we wouldn't be able to keep up with, I suppose, the land use required for the old version of wheat?
Yeah. I mean, the frequency of famines was increasing, and there was also even then climate change was having an impact, presumably. But yeah, population increase.
Big Oil was letting us know about that. But I'm now thinking that this is to do with a sort of resistance to famine or resistance to disease or something like that. Because I think, or is it per unit area that the wheat takes up? It's now producing much, much more grain per unit plant, which then would also...
It's literally that. Yeah, it's literally just we managed to create strains of wheat that give you more wheat per effort.
Right.
Just a better product all round. And techniques and technologies which allowed you to just put in less work and get back more.
Okay, so...
I mean, at the end of the day, the plant and us are kind of working towards the same goal to a certain extent. Like plants don't want weeds. We can just sort of...
Would the animal equivalent of this be that you've got someone who is just now entirely geared towards having more babies or having more uteruses, or... Perhaps you should explain the part of the plant that we're eating.
What's the equivalent of a seed?
So it's just more sperm, is it?
Well, this is the thing that gets a bit messy. So when you want to define how successful an organism has been, people will say, like, you'll read people say wheat is the most successful organism on the planet. But then I'm thinking that seems silly though, because chicken's the most successful animal. Then and it feels I would define a successful organism as one that has the most choice over its life.
But chickens have got no choice over their life. They have they're enduring the most Pyrrhic victory possible, I think, for any organism ever, in terms of sort of successfully large population, but awful casualties every day.
This is the thing.
4 World War IIs a day is probably
I guess
most
chattable
fact that I've gotten from this podcast, is to say to people, every single day, 4 times the total number of casualties of World War II, total number of deaths of World War II, all sides, civilian, military, whatever circumstance, any part of the world, from Indian famines to, whatever was happening in Europe. And that's happening 4 times every day for chickens. But
yeah, I mean, wheat probably can compete with that, I guess, the wheat deaths. Probably off the
I suppose you're right in terms of successful organism is organism that can choose what it's doing with its time. But I don't know if wheat's goals were ever larger than sitting in a field somewhere soaking up sunlight until something cuts it down.
This is the thing. I mean, maybe you can say that wheat, by that metric, is the most successful because it is now incredibly good at sitting in the sun until something cuts it down with no competitors. I mean, if wheat had evolved an internal mechanism where there was a protein that could achieve for wheat what we have achieved for wheat, we'd be like, wow, what an amazing evolution. They've just evolved that. They've just evolved a great strategy to breed and reproduce and be protected, but externally through us. Like if we were just living inside the wheat as like a amoeba or something, we'd credit the wheat with that. But actually, we're doing the same thing. We're just creating the perfect environment.
I have another question. Would the wheat be fine? So if we all died for whatever reason, there was let's say there was a really bad coronavirus that was both somehow really contagious and also killed people very quickly. which is, if you've ever played Plague Inc., something that's very difficult to pull off. So there's this virus, it kills all humans, all the wheat fields are fine, so it's not a sort of nuclear war. Within 3 years, how's the wheat doing? Can it reproduce by itself, or is it so dependent now on human farming and cultivation that wheat would quickly get surpassed by lots of other plants?
Wheat would probably get surpassed by lots of other... I mean, wheat can't reproduce on its own, really. I mean, no crops can, really. I mean, basically crops have delegated their reproductive duties to us, their slaves.
Right.
There is no... They can't really do it on their own because we don't need them to, so we've bred them not to. We've bred them for other things, and in that process they've gladly obliged and lost a lot of the things that they used to have, you know.
They've lost their capacity to do a lot of their functions just to create as many seeds as possible.
Yeah, but they've also lost like the ability. They don't need to compete with weeds much because we poison all the weeds. So they're like, oh, we don't really have to worry about, like, this is a great example of, so the gene I'm about to tell you about, Norin10, which I've mentioned a bit, this gene would be like nuclear, like awful for a live wheat strain living in the wild. But for this particular, wheat in the circumstances and the context of agriculture, it meant that we can have way more of it and it's even better. And I think it's quite surprising what Norin10 does, because it sort of highlights like what the problem was with wheat in the first place. What do you think Norin10 does? We put Norin10 into basically every single wheat strain now. Norin10's amazing. If you had to pick one gene that like changed the world, it's that,
You said it increases the number of seeds per wheat plant.
No, I didn't. Well, it kind of has that effect, but that's not specifically what it does. It does one thing, and the result of that is that we can get more wheat for our buck.
Is there a limit on what would limit the number of seeds that you're producing?
That's very good. Very, very good angle. And think about it. If you have imagine a shuck of wheat, or what are they called? An ear of corn or whatever of wheat. And imagine you adding more and more seeds onto it. What's the first thing that goes wrong?
You haven't got enough space for more seeds.
Imagine you do. Just imagine you keep sticking them on there.
You suddenly covered all your leaves?
No, this is the part where the flower of the wheat has died. It's not doesn't need leaves anymore. This part of the wheat is just for reproduction. Why doesn't it have 3,000 seeds? Why doesn't wheat do that?
Would fall over by weight, so they strengthened the base of the plant to be able to hold more seeds, and therefore it just has more seeds now.
Not even that, but yes, basically that's what the problem is. Like, lodging is when wheat falls over, basically, and that means that you can't harvest it as easily, and it's a huge problem. So what we do is we go, oh, we want loads more seeds. We give wheat like growth hormone, so it grows better. And yeah, it grows bigger seeds, but it also grows taller, which means that it's more easy to fall over. So that's not really a solution, because you get more seeds, but you also get taller wheat.
We were giving them the growth hormone in the and that was giving us more seeds, but it was falling over more.
If you give wheat nutrients and like gibberellin, which is a growth hormone, you get more seeds, but you get taller wheat.
You spray the growth hormone in your fields along with all the pesticides and so on.
Exactly, yeah. So there is that was a huge trade-off. Norin10 is a dwarfism gene.
It's a dwarfism gene?
Yeah, in wheat. It makes wheat half the size. Half as tall.
No way. So we've done a potion.
So
we've done a potion where we've given them growth hormone. So they've essentially become really chunky, muscly wheat that would be tall, and then countered that with a mixture of dwarf genes, which caused the wheat to stay short, but still chunky. Yeah. And now we've got normal size.
So the gibberellin is where, so Norin10 has most of its action in the stem. Like, that's where it is literally there to respond to gibberellin. So we basically made it so it can't, very insensitive to gibberellin in the stem tissue. So you get really short stemmed wheat. But if there's lots of nutrients, it's still going to grow big seeds, but it's just going to be shorter. So it's less likely to fall over and it's more stable. So you can therefore support even more seeds than you would before, because you've got short dwarf wheat. And you wouldn't think a dwarfism gene would be what you want in farming, but actually that was the key. That got rid of the limiting variable, and now we can just like get it bigger and bigger.
Yeah, no, I really like that as a sort of, in terms of choosing genes that you would go to and where you find this sort of beautifully, I don't want to say simple, but I want to say like the beautiful Sherlock kind of solution where you found something that you wouldn't go to intuitively, but only a genius would go, actually, that all works out perfectly for us, which is what we've done. And it has worked out perfectly with little downsides, I'm assuming.
I mean, the downsides can mostly be like accommodated for with other tampering and other selective breeding. Selective breeding is an incredibly powerful force, and because we've been doing it for us, I mean, the genome of wheat is such an absolute hydra at this point. It's so weird. And wheat is hexaploid, has 6 copies of each chromosome in every cell.
How close are we to just claiming
screwed around
wheat
with
as
it so
our
much.
own organism at this point?
But like, it's good for the wheat to be hexaploid. If we evolved it on our own, we wouldn't mind. The wheat is like, just consider us as an organ of the wheat. Imagine we're a protein being produced by wheat that has given it this superpower. I mean, plants are also very often hexaploid. That's not even like an awful thing for a plant to be. Like Paris japonica, which is one of the organisms with the largest genome in the world, is like 150 billion base pairs. That's octoploid naturally. It's like a natural hybrid between 4 species. It's got 8 copies of every chromosome, and its DNA base pairs are like 20 times more than a human being.
And
that's
and the
this plant that
motivation
chills out
for
in
that
Japan.
is what?
Well, so that's because of gene duplication events. So this is interesting. Like the organisms that have really big genomes don't make a lot of sense. Like not the biggest like we found is like an amoeba, and then second place is like a fern called the fork fern, which has like way over 150 billion, and then Paris japonica has 150 billion, and then there's a lungfish in Central Africa that has like 130 billion, which again is like way more than people, and that lungfish is just really good. But like it's also it's a question of
Is this the same animal that
That's what you
climbs
got to
into
ask
the
about
mud
this one.
and stays there over summer?
Yeah, it's one
Right.
of them. It's one of them. Yeah, the marbled lungfish.
I just remember Jeremy Wade would
But
find
it's like
them.
because it has such a slow metabolism. Its cells divide. I mean, the main drawback to having a big genome is that your cells can't divide as quickly.
You're downloading a large
ages
PDF
to
every
replicate.
single time you want to make a new cell.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of data to copy over. So for something like a mouse, that's disaster because you need to be making new cells all the time. A lungfish, they spend so much time in torpor that if your cells are dividing slowly, you're basically just a lump. You're basically just a lump of. They're basically just a brick. That's what.
Is there a sort of? Do you see it?
So it's fine.
I've just thought of it now because I'm thinking we produce trillions of sperm cells all the time, right? And that's our whole, half of our genome that we're
totally
copying over every single time. And there's got to be a rate there if you're saying that having more genes or more DNA is slowing it down, which obviously it would if you go right down to the physics of the fact that you're making more nucleotide pairs and so on. Is there an advantage to having a lower sperm count but a larger genome? And do we see trends in animals with sperm count and genome size?
But a larger genome isn't desirable, though. It doesn't mean you can do more shit. It doesn't mean you can do more stuff because most of the stuff in there is just junk
with
DNA.
Birds that
anyway,
are larger
right? It's not coding
genome,
DNA.
apparently they half their genome size to increase their flight capability. We saw it with bats as well, right?
Exactly.
A little bit.
A little bit. But they've been
and that's
flying for
to
a long time,
supposedly decrease weight.
But like, yeah,
was
if a
theory
marbled
for
lungfish.
that.
Yeah. No, I think I mean, as long as there's a selective pressure to do it, then yeah, chop away your genome. But like a lungfish doesn't fly, it doesn't need to. Most of the animals that have insanely large genomes only do it because there's no disadvantage.
Oh, so
to
it just sort of,
or because they're like a product
it's like
of
having
hybridization.
a messy
like
room.
wheat.
By paying less attention to it, it sort of just balloons in size.
Exactly, yeah. But like suddenly if you're a bird and you need to worry about that kind of thing, then that's
And
going
is there
away.
any
Like,
advantage to sort of cancer or some kind of genetic mutations where you have many copies of your genome over and over and over again, so you basically are immune to something like that?
It's an interesting one. I mean, if you're dividing your cells more often, then you have more of a chance of an error to be made. So I guess smaller genome could increase your chance of cancer potentially because you're doing more cell division and more replication. But on the flip side, maybe if you have a longer genome, there's more places for errors to occur. I don't know. It's probably a bit of a trade-off.
It depends what the order parameter, the size. Does the number of errors per unit genome increase with? Is it proportional to the genome size? Basically, is there a?
I bet there's research.
That would be really cool. Basically, if you've got twice
it's like
as
if
long,
you're copying across a really long
do you
book
make twice as many mistakes per copy?
versus
At which
5
point,
shorter books. Probably.
Yeah. versus a tiny novella with one mistake versus a encyclopedia with many mistakes, and I suppose then there's no advantage to genome size with regard to genetic mutation because you
yeah, I don't think I can't think of an example where there's a selective pressure to have a bigger genome size. That's very rare. I think it's either if you have a big one, it's because there's no pressure not to. Because again, most stuff in a genome doesn't need to be there. It's just a relic of something.
okay. So we've got what was the term hexaploid?
6 copies of each chromosome in every
6
cell.
copies
That's what
of
wheat
each.
is. And that's not all strains. That's just like, there's like a bunch of different, the evolution of wheat is crazy. It's like hybrids that occurred between wild strains in like Neolithic periods. And then a new strain was developed when it went from like diploid to tetraploid, which is 4. And that happened later when it got bred with another strain. And now we've got hexaploid, which is like way better. And actually, hexaploid is good. We actually like that because genome duplication events, I've talked about this in the past, it's something plants love to do. They take their whole genome and just copy it. They go from being diploid to tetraploid suddenly, where they have 2 copies of everything. They have loads of copies, and that allows for an avenue for innovation, right? If you have 2 copies of something, you can mess around with one of them, and the other one's still working.
Was this with
that kind
the
of thing.
maize producing those sort of jelly fingers?
Yeah. Well, it's one of the reasons why I was generalizing that. Yeah, that was a great example of how crops and things that are being selectively bred and things that can duplicate their genome really easily often undergo evolutionary changes really quickly and huge leaps in innovation. Because if you can copy all your genome, that's like, you basically have a lot of like room to play around with
And that
stuff,
was,
versus if
I suspect we'll have an image on screen, but that was, to cut a long story short, if I can remember right, Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, they'd have a jelly that they'd secrete that would have bacteria in it that would fix nitrogen from the air because the soil in the areas where it would grow would be nitrogen depleted.
Yep.
And then it could use those nitrogens to make more protein to make the maize. And they still grow it in parts of South America.
Yeah, it was totally amazing. But like, yeah, wheat has all sorts of tricks that are that cool, basically, which it has been allowed to develop because we've given it space to develop. Like because we've been experimenting with wheat in labs for so long, trying to give it all the conditions it needs to evolve something really weird and messed up. It has, in many cases, it has made huge jumps that a wild organism wouldn't do just because we've been treating it as our own sort of little experiment for our own purposes. But I mean, this is true with all crops as well, not just wheat, rice as well.
So rice is, when you say it's true of all crops, you say we've got dwarfism genes now within the crop that counteracts the growth hormone that we put in the soil.
I mean, by now, there's like hundreds of genes that are all working together and working against each other. Wheat genes that code for like the circadian rhythm of the wheat and the time that it blooms and the synchronicity it has with weeds and like the way it responds to certain pesticides and certain animals and its immune response. I mean, there's so many factors to consider, and all of them we've sort of designed and bred accidentally almost, just picking the wheat in the field that was the prettiest and breeding that one again and cloning it again. You can clone plants so easily. So finding one tiny plant that just did what you want it to do, you can just clone that as many times as you want.
None of this was CRISPR,
and then
where you did direct gene editing, where you cut the DNA strand and stick other things in. This was all just selective breeding back in the 60s.
Yeah, but also with plants, it's quite easy to get them to uptake genes because you can just stick them in a sort of solution with the DNA, and plants will occasionally just assimilate it. It's harder to do with animals. Plants are quite hungry for random genes. They're very free to experiment. They're sort of a bit freer.
I wonder, is that the freedom to experiment is by virtue of the inability to walk away from things that are harmful?
Right. Yeah. This is totally it. Canalization, decanalization, right? They experiment with their genome as a last resort to see if there's anything cool in there. They're flipping through the manual,
Yes.
any tricks in here that we can use.
That was such a delicious fact. What was it? It was in the moment of death, they basically spin the roulette wheel of their entire genome and turn into some sort of radioactive, nuclear, genetically mutated corn baby. And most of the time it totally fails and they die, but they were going to die anyway. But sometimes they become Superman, Yeah,
that's why you can't put jacket potatoes in the microwave because they might explode.
Saying they spin the wheel and they go.
Yeah, so more often than not, they turn to a landmine. It's really risky. But so I also want to bring up one more final. So this is like on the biology side. I'm going to go to the culture side in a minute. It's just like it's kind of I could talk for a really long time about like things that wheat has evolved to be good at being wheat. But the general message is like, well, I mean, I've kind of just given you a list. Like the list is just everything you can imagine. It's just like wheat has become more sturdy against the wind, but it's a trade-off, right? Each thing is a trade-off. So it's become less competitive and it's less good at getting sun because it's less good at growing quickly and getting sun and growing fast and rushing it. It doesn't need to rush it because the reason plants rush is to beat their competitors. We're destroying their competitors so that we can really take its time and it can grow more slowly and more regularly, and it doesn't compete with other wheat in the area, and it's just sort of like very stable, and it gives way too much energy into its seeds than it normally would.
It's such a supportive relationship.
It doesn't disperse its seeds. Yeah. it keeps its seeds stuck to its flower, because if usually they're dispersed by the wind. We do not want that. So like, no, please, thank you, do not do that. Like, keep your seeds
you
next
are
to
in
you.
this field.
Do not let the wind get involved.
Next door is carrots.
Yeah, exactly.
So don't you dare.
Yeah, don't mess with them. We've got our own thing going with the carrots, okay? But like, so the weeds are a huge part of this, though. There's an arm race going on between humans and weeds. Weeds have been like, they're like the joke. They're like our joke. Like, they're the nemesis to our nutrition and our well-being for millennia. It's just weeds. Like, weeds are like, they're just like the bane of existence. People have been annoyed about weeds for hundreds of thousands of years. You can make a good living on weeds. They've been complaining.
Just going house to house saying, you know, if you find some happy family in there who've got a garden, you say, I'll take your weeds out for, you know, $80. You spend the whole day just de-weeding. Yep. They'll be grateful.
This is true. But what if you miss something, Henry?
Then there's a lot of empty soil and one weed plant who's got plans on his mind. There's a power vacuum in the garden, so to speak.
This is set up so well now for this. The fact that made me want to do this, I'm now going to tell you. It's been set up beautifully now. So you know rye bread.
Yeah, I want to know what that is because
it's interesting, isn't it? It's a different plant. It's not wheat.
Is it called rye?
It's a different species. It's called rye. Yeah, and oats. They also got a thing going. Well, you know oats.
I'm an oats enjoyer.
Oats are great.
Yeah,
it's an oats enjoyer.
Straight oats with milk.
No
That's
shame
me.
in that. Yeah. So okay, here's a question.
I've got to say, Scotland really gave up. They achieved the base level of food, and we're happy with that. To be honest, we have got the oats from the ground and the milk from the cow, and we will simply combine them with the power of fire and cooking, and we're done.
Spice trade.
I'm happy with that.
Not for me.
I'm out. And still, in 2026, after thousands of years of Scottish food being consumed and civilization and so on, we still combine milk with oats, and that's a staple.
Totally. But like, here's an interesting question that I was wondering a while ago. It's like, okay, so we had wheat. Wheat was already so good. Why do we have like all this other alternatives, like oats and rye, for example? Just those two I'm thinking of right now because they apply very well here. Why do they also exist? Like, rye is just like wheat, but a bit worse. I mean, like, maybe it creates some nice sour Scandinavian bread or whatever, sure. But like, why rye feels like a waste of time. If you're a farmer, why wouldn't you just grow wheat? Who was the first guy to just be like, I want to try with this new thing called rye, and I'm risking my livelihood for it, but maybe it'll take off in a few thousand years. It just feels, why would you do that? Like, we only have like dogs. We've only got dogs. No one just like auto-domesticated armadillos because they thought it might catch on. Like, no. Why does rye?
Well, cats, to be fair.
What is rye? What's the point? Cats, yeah, but I guess that happened in a different place, which is probably what you're going to say. But like, okay, yeah, that's true. Cats are different because cats and dogs are different. Like, cats and dogs, they feel different.
Let me just knock that one out of the park.
Rye and
was
wheat
there a
the
religious reason for rye being a thing? This could be a different podcast.
There wasn't.
Religious history of rye. Well, okay, so I'm going to connect the dots on the things you've mentioned so far in the podcast.
Yeah.
If you're watching this and wondering where's Henry getting all this from, then you should watch the whole podcast.
Yeah.
But you've mentioned weed development. Is rye more weed resistant than wheat? And oats. I also have can we make rye milk or wheat milk instead of oat milk?
Wheat milk? I think wheat. That's a good question. What? I don't understand why oat milk can make oat milk, but maybe like the starch is more easily suspended in the. I bet we could make wheat milk.
Could be a good one.
That's just wet.
Also, can we stop with almonds? Almonds are not worth the farming, water consumption, and so on, I think.
Bold claim. Quite nice almonds.
Anyway.
Like, we disagree about that. I quite like almonds. I mean, like an almond consumes less water than a sheep. You know, that's the first problem. Like cows and shit. Like, that's the deal with them first. Then get to almonds. Come on, guys. Like meat eaters who are like, oh, you're drinking almond milk. That's so bad for the environment. I'm like, you joking? Can you shut the fuck up? Can you stop talking right now? You understand how many almonds your cow has eaten? Like, no, I don't want to hear it. Okay, be quiet about almonds. It's not even remotely the same thing. Okay.
They need to be defensive about one of
Sorry, that's a trigger for me, actually. Turns out I really give a crap about that argument.
So
anyway, why do we domesticate rye? What was the point? Why do we bother? No.
What's good with rye?
It's the same. It's like the same plant as wheat. It looks the same as wheat. It's exactly the same, like uncannily the same, given that it's not even that related.
Something about this. It's a darker color. Is it some kind of ambient condition that will affect wheat, which will turn it into rye? So originally wheat, but
it's a different species.
It's a different species, but it looks the same.
Yeah, it's a different thing. It looks the same. That's a clue.
It looks the same because it used to look the same. It didn't used to look the same. So we've tinkered with it to make it look like wheat. okay, has it adapted to look like wheat so that we keep growing it without realizing we're growing it because we think we're growing wheat?
Yeah.
Really?
It's a Valvidian mimic.
Really?
The question to why did we domesticate rye? The answer is we didn't.
They're the +1 to the party.
Rye is just a really sneaky. It's just a really sneaky weed.
It's a weed.
Yeah. It's a weed. It was a weed for ages. And we'd go around going, oh crap, there's some rye. Get rid of the rye. Oh crap, there's some more rye. Get rid of the
I
rye.
may as well eat it
Then
at this point.
one day a rye woke up that looked so much like wheat that we were like, that's not a rye, that's a wheat.
It's
We'll
that
let him
friend
stay.
in the friend group who just
He
keeps
had more
coming along with
babies.
you and no one does, and then you eventually
Yeah.
just induct them into
He's
the
a
friend group
Valvidian
because you can't
mimic.
get rid of them.
I refer to those people as weeds.
As weeds. Or rye.
But
You should
then-
call them rye
then-
because that's
And that would, if they got that joke, then I would maybe let them stay.
that's amazing.
But yeah, there's a lot of plants. They're called secondary crops. Oats are the same. They basically started as weeds with no nutritional value, and then they evolved to look exactly like crops because that meant they could sneak and hide in fields and no one would
Wait,
weed
this
them
is
out.
the-
And then by evolving to look like crops, they had to get, like, in order for rye to look like wheat, it has to grow
No,
fat
but this
seeds
is
as
the
well.
exact same
Because
mechanism
rye
as...
is like, I'm not going to look like wheat unless I have fat seeds.
This is the exact same mechanism as just normal domestication of animals. This is I have something to gain from humans, and so I will tinker with myself over a short period of time. Actually, probably it's not millions of years, is it? There's
Oh, yeah.
thousands of years over a very short period of time.
Yeah.
Through epigenetics or what's going on there, and then I will become more likable.
Gentrification events and standard plants.
Huh? This is the plant's about to die, but what if I was more attractive to humans?
Yeah.
Would you take me back?
Like, every time we try and grow in this amazing field with infinite food and infinite water, these huge monsters come and rip us out the ground. This is a huge problem. Let's just tinker until we get it right. I'm going to make some really big seeds. So big that a human thinks I'm the same thing as his special plant that has big seeds because he made them. So, like,
They're still
they've
working
become
on the flavor,
delicious,
though, aren't they? They're still working on the
That's
flavor.
this is the thing. In order to look like wheat, they have to
But they're
become
not
delicious.
working on the flavor because we're happy with them now. So they've achieved peak flavor.
But the flavor doesn't matter.
Because we're no longer selecting for flavor.
The flavor doesn't matter.
Initially, the flavor would have mattered.
We were never selecting for flavor in wheat. I don't think people select for flavor in wheat as often as you like to think. I think they're selecting for just like wheat and wheat. They want as much seeds in the wheat as possible. Like, if a rye looks on the outside identical to a wheat plant, then it basically is as good as one.
If I can
because it has to have
digest
the seed
it,
mass.
then it's good. It's good to go.
Yeah, and it comes, like, originally it wasn't like completely unrelated. Like, it's a similar kind of family, but it looked very different. Like, wild rye looked obviously like a weed in a field of weeds. Like, you'd rip it out. But then they just evolved to look like wheat so they could hide. And by doing so, they became tasty. Eventually, we realized that actually, I'm getting a call from my sister. This is a bad time. She's in the other room. Why doesn't she come and get Josie? Hi. Oh my God, absolutely not. Like, hard no. Like, incredibly hard no. Are you serious? I just drunk 3 beers and I'm in the middle of a podcast recording. Like, that's the hardest no of my life. Like, no way can I do that. I'm so sorry. I'm not, actually. I'm not sorry. I take it back. I'm not sorry. That's the
She's
truth.
asking you to pick her up from a party.
Yeah, I'm not sorry. You listened to the Dragon podcast?
Wait.
Oh my God, really? It was boring. That's cool. She did sound alright, yeah. No, I appreciate that. Thank you. That's good. No, because, I mean, you're part of our wave, We're trying to, trust me, this episode's way less boring. We're talking about wheat. So,
Yeah, it's definitely one you wouldn't want to miss it.
yeah. I mean, you can catch up on in a week or so. That's quite surprising. Yeah. Hey, it can't be that bad then.
It wasn't that bad.
Okay, cool. Well, I need to keep recording now because Henry's on the call with me at the moment. But I'm sorry I can't drive you guys home. Anyway, we were talking about Valvidian mimicry because it's amazing and so
Yes.
cool. You
Rye is a
bastard,
sneaky
basically.
bastard.
That's the subtext. It's really sneaky, but it's so sneaky that it accidentally did exactly what we wanted. And then, like, after a while, we realized, hey, this weed that's hanging out in my wheat field actually isn't that bad. You can use it to make slightly worse bread. So maybe some people in, like, Scandinavia will, like, take that to heart and, like, make, like, maybe rye has advantages at this point because it's been sneaky for so long. It's maybe, hey, maybe you're actually quite useful. And now it's domesticated and gone on its own track, But originally, the reason it even got here in the first place is because it was a successful
What's to separate weeds from just normal plants? Was wheat originally a weed, or are weeds just plants that reproduce very quickly and can grow in hostile environments and therefore just bug anything that you're trying to grow in a controlled environment? Is it
I'm
just
having a flashback
resilient
to me
plants?
telling you this when we were in year 8 and you finding it amazing.
Don't.
A weed. Do you remember this? A weed is any plant that we don't want to be growing there. So if you have 2 flower beds and in one you're growing roses and the other you're growing turnips, if a rose grows in the turnip patch, the rose is a weed. And if a turnip grows in the road patch, the turnip's the weed. Like, a weed is just whatever we don't desire in that particular
Yeah,
location.
I think I must have been convinced
Anything
that
can be a
weeds
weed.
had
It's
some
not a
kind of.
taxonomic.
It is interesting though that most weeds that we associate with the term weed look similar. You know, like a sort of just a little green
Yeah, that's
sprout.
true.
You know.
Yeah, little
Yeah, little-
herbaceous, when they want big fat leaves that can cover up everything else. And they are fast growing because you need to be fast growing if you want to
Yeah.
succeed as a weed.
Yeah, exactly. So there's probably
And
a
like
group
weeds often
that is our weed group.
I'd say that's probably not the case. Like you can get like compositae and like that's what we like dandelions and stuff. We often think of as weeds, but like grass is a weed. Like there's all sorts of any kind of grass can be a weed. Like any kind of a sapling can be a weed. Any plant can be a weed. Like a lot of plants in their young stages look very similar because there's quite a sort of strict formula to how to succeed as a plant. You need to create a large surface area quite quickly, quite high off the ground. There's only a certain way you can do that. So a lot of saplings look very similar because there's only one way to succeed as a sapling. Only later in life can you really take advantage of different strategies, and that's when plants look more different. But like an oak sapling looked quite similar to like, a blade of grass at the very beginning because they're both trying to do the same thing.
Oh, that's cool. That is cool. It's sort of a similar idea to how...
I just thought it was amazing.
I keep drawing these animal parallels, but it's a similar idea to how you can't really tell what animal you're looking at in its embryonic stage until it's sort of slightly developed. Because at the very, very start, they're going for the same things, 4 limbs and a spine and a sort of brain somewhere and a heart. They're going for a heart, really, at the very start, aren't they?
Yeah, I guess. Well, I mean, at the beginning, that doesn't matter because there's a placenta and stuff, but like that's... Yeah,
what organ forms first? Is it heart?
It really is all of them at the same time, guys. I mean, what organ is fully functioning first isn't a weird question because, like, none of the organs are really fully functioning at the very beginning. But, like, structurally, what organ looks the most like, I guess, bones, you could say, kind of.
Skin?
But, like, skin's kind of last.
Really? That's freaky. We're sort of a jelly blob of muscles.
I mean, like, this is all... Yeah, you are a jelly blob. Like, why would you need skin? Skin's like, you need that to protect you from external
And it's dead cells
stuff.
as well, so why would you be making dead cells when you're an embryo?
True. Yeah.
I wonder when you come out, how dead are your skin cells? Is it like when you graze your knee and you get a fresh layer of skin underneath? Is that what newborn babies are like, or
like 100% graze? Full graze.
It's completely fresh skin, It's like when they come out, is it like the cold air is like a burn almost, like
and the whole baby just scabs.
It's just like so sensitive to the fresh air that it's just come into contact with. And then the whole idea of your lungs being filled with the fluid. I mean, it's just not a great experience.
Yeah, that is crazy. Actually, that's really Matrix. The idea that my lungs used to be filled with fluid and not
fluid that contained your urine. I think. Yeah.
Wait, what?
Yeah. I think you pee into the amniotic space. Yeah. I think that is the case.
I thought you'd need to pee because you're like having exchange with the placenta, and that takes.
Are you able to Google this? Because my Googling abilities are.
Because you're not drinking. Like you don't need to drink because you have the same blood as your mother. I don't think babies pee. Do babies pee in the womb?
I thought babies peed and then it just went straight into the amniotic fluid.
Why would they? But they have the same blood as their mum. Like they use their mum's kidneys. Like I spelled womb WOMD.
Womb.
That's pretty stupid. The womb. Womb. Do babies pee in the womb? Crap. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, by the time a baby is full term, I like that, by the way, full term baby. Seems quite funny to me. Nearly 100% of the amniotic fluid that surrounds him is actually urine.
Oh, that's so much better than I thought it was. That is such a beautiful thing.
Nearly 100%. Why is my search so bad? Why am I like,
nearly 100%? So you're coughing up your own pee, essentially, when you...
correct.
Is that a lie?
I'm asking ChatGPT.
Because then that just means that the fluid that comes out of your lungs at the very start is just your own pee, which, that's wild.
Yes, they do. Okay, I've never seen ChatGPT give a more certain answer in my whole life. It's just, yes, they do, full stop. That was literally the first sentence. That's so... By the second trimester, a fetus starts producing urine as its kidney begins to function. It releases this urine into the amniotic sac. That's amazing. Why bother? You have the same blood as your mum. What's the point? Use your mom's kidneys. It's a normal and important part of development. The baby swallows amniotic fluid, which helps the development of the digestive system and lungs. The fluid is constantly recycled. Your body produces it, the baby swallows it, filters it through the kidneys, and urinates it back out. It's a healthy and expected process during pregnancy. So you urinate in the womb, breathe it in, assimilate it back, pee it out again. And then that is a healthy and expected process during pregnancy.
Some people haven't stopped, and that's not healthy and not expected. So
unbelievable. That is an unbelievable fact that I had no idea
welcome.
was true. It's really quite upsetting. But like, I guess if you're hydrated, but like,
you just wanted to.
Okay, now
you want to prove it wrong somehow.
I just really don't like that because that doesn't feel necessary. Like, do babies they don't poo because they're not eating? They do.
It's just liquid amniotic fluid coming out of their mum.
Do babies poo in the? This is the next question. This is
it's
the obvious follow-up.
Is it?
Babies poo in the womb. No, because like babies poo a bit after they're born because it's amniotic fluid. No, babies don't poo in the womb. Waste products are handled through the placenta. Well, then that's insane. They build up a process called meconium in their intestines. This is a sticky, dark material made of things like swallowed amniotic fluid, cells, and mucus. Most babies pass meconium only after they're born within the first day or so. So that's mostly pee as well, I guess, because it's made of amniotic fluid, which is pee.
So that's the only time in your life that you pooed pee.
It's an incredible fact. That is an incredible fact. You have pooed pee.
We've all done it.
Everyone listening. If you're healthy and expected, you've pooed pee. That's cool. But what a bonus fact. That's great. All right, okay. What were we talking about?
We were talking about.
So I there's in a direction I want to go in now, but I quite like how free flowing this conversation is. Anything else you want to talk about in the biology perspective?
From a biology perspective, let's just tie it off.
Yeah.
Give a summary.
Okay. Wheat is
so just summarize.
Species.
Yeah.
You summarize. Actually, you summarize.
So to summarize, what I've gathered is that rye is a weed. Wheat
was a weed.
Bad until we selectively bred it to have stunted growth whilst injecting it with growth hormones, so it became really stocky and had loads of seeds but didn't grow so tall that it fell over.
True, yeah.
Which is a surprising turn of events. And now we'll be moving on to a fact that is not biology, but is of another kind, which is...
Sociology?
Sociology.
Not usually a membrane that we pierce. Sociology.
No, we're straight through.
We're straight through on the other
What is
side.
the definition of sociology? What is sociology? This is such a...
text my girlfriend and ask her.
Yeah.
I think it's like the study of social friend groups. I don't know.
It's the study of friend groups.
It's the study of
big and small.
People, socius, socialist people.
Don't hit us with a Latin to try and make us seem like
it's fake Latin.
Let's Google a sociology definition right now.
It's going to be the study of... That feels totally like pointless.
Human interaction.
Sociology. Why am I on Bing? What's going on? Social science that studies human society and its development. Okay, that applies quite nicely to what I'm about to say. Yeah, we're studying society and its development, Henry. And subsets within society, of course. Being
wheat
specific.
And society is the question.
But I mean, that's a question with a million answers. Wheat and society are best of friends. Society exists because of wheat. It's the first thing that we farmed. And the reason society exists is because we stopped having to move around to find food. The only way we were able to do that is by learning to grow food on the same piece of earth over and over again in the same place. And the first thing we could do that with was wheat. So wheat is the reason society exists. Wheat is also the reason that inequality exists. Think about it.
I thought mosquitoes were... I mean, you're a huge fan of the... I have found the thing that is in human life that has dictated everything. You're looking for the meaning of humans, the meaning of life.
I would say
almost.
Wheat is a better answer than mosquitoes for meaning of life.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean,
for those who don't know, mosquitoes have killed 1 in every 2 humans that have ever lived, and that has had a pretty sizable effect on the way that history has panned out.
Hugely sizable. I would say that mosquitoes shaped how the society evolved. I would say wheat was the catalyst that allowed society to even begin in the first place. Like, mosquitoes are a big factor in shaping society. Wheat is like way more fundamental than that. Wheat is society. It is the pillar on which it is built. And crops in general. Let's not just say wheat, because there's also like other indigenous societies, for example, that have farmed things like tubers and like yams or like other crops as well, sweet potatoes, stuff like that, all over the world for like a long, long time. But the point I'm trying to get here is an interesting one. is why. Okay, so there's like sociologists that have basically theorized that in societies which have farmed crops that go off, so stuff like yams and tubers, and big things that are like stores of starch for the root system, that's supposed to power a plant, that aren't designed to travel long distances or whatever. They're just designed to be in the ground. And we eat these like potatoes and carrots, and they're delicious, and they're very, very high in nutrients, and they're great things to farm.
Yeah.
But they go off quite quickly. That's the one disadvantage. The thing with wheat is you can store wheat in a big grain silo for like ages.
Keep it dry and it's grand.
Yeah, totally. It can last for years. That is that we have inequality in the world
because someone looks after the grain silo.
Well, one guy has more food than the other guy. If all your food resets every month, you can't accumulate wealth. You can't accumulate power. The whole reason we have differences in society and strata and all of that is because one guy once decided to have a big hole in the ground where he kept all his wheat, and that meant that he didn't have to work every single year to make new wheat. He could actually have enough wheat that he could live without making wheat himself, maybe hire other people to make wheat, maybe give them wheat so they give him stuff back. That kind of thing.
I see. It's sort of an interesting idea, the idea of forming strata when a lot of the world was yet to be explored. There wasn't an issue with housing or land or something. The current crises of the housing market. Back in the day, I suppose, if you were a caveman or you're an early farmer, you could just say, well, stuff this. You're richer than me. I'm going to go 200 miles in that direction, or I'll walk 50 miles or whatever, and I'll just set up my own shop there and I'll kill whatever deer are there and eat them, and that's my deal.
Yeah.
But I suppose you could set up a system around ease of access to wheat because you've created a system yourself and you accumulate wheat and you can give other people wheat. And I suppose the ability to store a grain encourages this idea of static settlements because people will conglomerate around the wheat store.
Yeah, I mean, it's the original currency. The thing that currency evolved to buy and sell was food, and that came in the form. I mean, no one's going to sit there impressed by your pile of potatoes because in a month's time, that's just a pile of soil. That's not impressive to anyone. Pile of wheat, Jesus, this guy can feed his family for a long time.
And also you can do army campaigns.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole thing with
literally the thing that started all.
Sailors' foods, and stuff that allowed long-term shipping voyages, ship's biscuits and salt pork and things like that, where it's all about how do I preserve food for an extremely long period of time. And just having preserved food supports so many things that we, I suppose, take for granted with food. Because
Absolutely.
I mean, supermarket infrastructure allows us to sort of forget about the fact that food goes off really quickly.
Yeah.
And then the idea, going back to the start of the multiple breadbasket failure and the fact that the world's food supplies only lasts 2 months if we run out of food production, that goes to show just how little time food lasts. And it also, I suppose, shows how quickly we eat the food that we have got.
Yeah. I mean, this is like one theory where like societies that more regularly eat perishable crops, like the Incas or like other societies like that, are more equal than societies that eat cereals and crops that are in that family, because there's the possibility for the idea of wealth, the thing that starts it all.
Okay, I can get behind this whole sociology thing. That is extremely interesting to think about. And I would love to see hard data on, can we put graphs on screen? Is that something we can now do with our video format?
And try and find some.
Check out the graphs on screen, guys. This shows that if you can store food and food lasts longer, then there's less or more inequality in society. Nowadays, when you look at America, which has absolutely no limit on the amount of preservatives they can put in their food, we're seeing greater inequality there than we saw in France in 1792, which is when they had the revolution.
I'm not sure. I don't know if it could extrapolate there, like to preservatives,
Well, I mean,
like
I'm making a sort of jab
possible.
at American society being unequal.
That's a good point. I think so. Have you heard of the rice theory of culture?
No.
It's wonderful. It's so elegant. It's something that was sort of came up with by this guy called Thomas Talman. That was his sort of brainchild, and it's now been sort of replicated and studied in a lot of different countries, and it's quite well accepted as a sort of baseline idea. And it comes down to the different farming practices involved in farming rice and wheat. We haven't talked about rice much, but rice is very different to wheat. It's still in the same sort of general family. You're still eating, something that was designed to give a seed nutrients as it grows. Rice is a more productive plant, right? You get more calories per volume of rice, per yield of rice than you do for wheat. It's actually very productive.
But I'm assuming you need, because rice paddies are in water, I'm assuming you need a much higher water amount than was available in, say, Europe.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah. So you can grow rice on dryland rice is a thing, but it's not anywhere near as good. You can have 5 times more rice if you have wetland rice. Has that opportunity for boosting it. So pretty soon you're not going to be competitive. If you grow your rice dry, you have to grow it wet like everybody else. And to have a rice paddy, yes, you get way more productive crops. Like, yeah, you can grow a crazy amount of rice, but the work threshold, the effort you have to put in to get a yield of rice is way, way higher.
Right.
Wheat can realistically be farmed by one guy in a year and you get enough to live on. Rice, you need like a team of people to get enough rice to actually have a successful yield, but that yield is so great that it can feed a team of people.
Yeah, and what are they doing, this team of people, on a sort of daily basis?
It's incredibly difficult. So rice is, having a flooded field in general requires a lot of worrying about irrigation and getting water to go where it doesn't want to go. That also requires a huge amount of cooperation between farmers that wheat farmers don't have to worry about.
To be
You
able
both
to
have to
stack
agree.
all the fields with water in them.
You all need to be on the same page there. You can't just be, you deal with your field, I'll deal with my field. We get water from different places or whatever. In rice, it's like, your field is above my field. I rely on you to feed my family. And then I will give you my labor and my work because you need to spend all day, hours and hours of your day, like insane, unbelievable amounts of work that actually goes into farming rice.
Just to keep the rice.
Sickening. Just the amount of
rice
backbreaking
just more on
work.
the edge of death? So you're balancing it on a knife. You're on a knife edge of so many different variables that you need to constantly keep an eye on and juggle to be able to keep the rice in the sweet spot that it grows properly. Is that sort of an idea?
If you have like a high water environment, it's very easy for weeds to grow and stuff. Like, it's a very so you have to do more weeding than you normally would. It's also just way harder to deal with seedlings and stuff in wet mud. It just requires way more effort. You can't do things en masse as easily. Like, because water moves stuff around, you basically have to hand plant every rice seedling. You can't really just sprinkle them in the water because the water will all wash them into the same place. They won't be distributed properly.
True.
You can just put on the ground and en masse. Rice, you basically have to plant every seedling by hand. There's not really a way around that. And there are people right now in the world that have been planting rice seedlings in a paddy for the last 15 hours and will be doing that. There are people doing that right now. And that's just there's not enough physios in the world to adequately attend to those people, because it's a lot of bending down and it's an incredible amount of repetitive work and it's just painful, and in 40 degrees of heat and whatever. You can't be doing that on your own. It's not practical at all. So rice farmers, cultures and locations and areas which have traditionally farmed rice, which is a lot of places in the world, rice is eaten by basically everybody. Those places had to divide labor. You would give your labor to somebody else because they needed it, and they would give their labor to you, and you would share water and you'd share resources. And there's a sort of system of debt that you just need. It's just as a baseline, because of the demands of the crop, you need to have that system. You need to collaborate a huge amount more with fellow farmers than a wheat farmer does, just because of the crop itself. Nothing to do with the people, just because of the crop. As a result of this, people and cultures that are developed that more readily farm rice are more collectivist. They have stricter social norms. They have a greater sense of honor and of shame, because, there's so much more riding on your social standing. You have more of a sense of your reputation being important.
About whether you're trustworthy and you stick to your morals.
Can directly translate into whether you get labor from someone or doesn't get labor from someone. You rely on other people way more, so your social standing is way more important than in a culture that has farmed wheat.
Because you can do whatever you want as long as you've got your own fort held down, then you're grand with wheat.
Yeah, exactly, basically. And yeah, okay, people, like, sure, you could be general about this and say, this makes sense. I think of people in the East and in China and places that farm rice as being really into social norms and stuff, whereas in the West, we're all chill and free because we farm wheat. But it's so much more deep than that. That's not even touching the surface of this effect. In just China, because we've already talked about how China produces so much wheat as well as rice, right? There are areas of China which have never grown rice and have grown wheat for generations and generations and millennia, and areas of China nearby to that where rice is king and always has been. So a study in China, which took place a while ago, which was really the first study to definitively prove this, took university students in the modern day who had grown up in wheat farming or rice farming areas. They divided them just based on these two categories, and they did double-blinded it. It was randomly selected for other variables. The only thing that separated these two people on average was whether they grew up in cultures, wealthy or impoverished, central or non-central, northern or south, whether it's rice or wheat farming. That's the only thing that united these two groups. And then they gave them a series of sociological tests, like a
Oh, I love
sociogram.
this. I love this.
Sociograms are so interesting. Sociograms seem so weird and arbitrary, but it's one of those things where in sociology, like, if you do something very arbitrary and ask someone a very weird, silly question, on average, the silliness gets washed out in the data and you can get interesting results. You'll see what I mean in a second. There's this thing called a sociogram, which people give people in sociological experiments. And a good example is like they did a test in Japan where they ask people in Japan, so I'd like you to draw a circle representing yourself. And they go, okay, I'll just draw a circle. And then they go, okay, I'd like you to draw some circles representing your parents. Okay, I'll draw some circles, and I'll draw some circles representing your friends and your teachers and your pets, and they'll draw some circles representing those. They assume that's not the task.
Don't
And
even. So what?
it's
No way is there. That's such an abstract task to see a
so
trend in.
abstract, absolutely. But it's been it's not like one study that this is a technique that's been. This is like centrifuging. This is like a sociological technique that has been
Really?
used in experiments for ages. Yeah. It's like a way of doing an experiment. It's not like one guy came up with this. This is like a sociogram. That's what it's called. Basically, it's very well used. And like loads of studies have been like people in Japan, for example, when asked to do this task, will draw their circle the same size as their mum's circle, which is the same size as their friend's circle, which is the same size as their teacher's circle, because
Wow.
that's just natural. In like, if you ask an American to do that, they'll be like, this is my circle here. And obviously these two ones can be parents and they're a little smaller. And then these tiny ones are my friends. And that's just the way they naturally do it without being told to. Obviously I'm the biggest circle because I'm the guy you're asking. Like, I'm the guy here. I'm obviously the most important. I'm
Yeah.
gonna draw a bit. And it's not that they're selfish or that they're assholes. It's just that's what they would assume. It's like, oh, I can change it if you want. I just assumed that, oh yeah, it doesn't matter. I don't care. It's not deep. I'll just make the circles the same size. That's not what we're asking. You assume your circle was bigger, not because you think of yourself as like self-important, but that's just because the society you're in is like an individualist society. In Japan, all the circles are the same if you ask them. That's just an interesting way of studying this. And then they did that with students in the same university, in the same classes, that had grown up from a wheat or a rice farming background historically, not even that their families farmed.
So they've narrowed it down to just white or rice as white. They've narrowed it down to just rice or wheat as their the determining factor between these two sociological different.
Yeah. But it's also like you wouldn't, like if you ask these kids, they're like, I grew up in a wheat farming area, or I didn't know that. I've never farmed wheat before. But it's just that's the culture.
We've grown up in London, Sam, which would be a wheat farming area if you were to call it. But to me, it's have I eaten more? I've probably eaten more wheat just from bread. But I've eaten a lot of rice.
Mm-hmm.
And what's my relationship with wheat farming and rice farming is a good question. And would I mean, it's spoiled it now because I'm now thinking of it consciously, which you're not supposed to do in a sociology exam.
Well, you've already failed, exactly.
I've already failed, but would I draw my circle bigger? I suppose I would, apparently. But what's driving that nowadays? Is this a societal? So the society that we live in now is the same, or has got remnants from what it used to be when we used to be thinking about wheat farming a lot?
It could be, yeah. I mean, the attitudes that have now been translated to other aspects of life that don't feel like they're related to agriculture. Yeah, it's like you're projecting this. Yeah, exactly. Like we don't care so much about what other people think of us, and we attribute that to all sorts of things that we think are Western innovations or like different cultural things, and we're more free and liberal, all that. It's not that. It's just because we farmed wheat instead of rice. And yeah, I mean,
that's a really cool thought.
In these universities, they're not considering wheat or rice. They're very surprised when they find that's what the study's about. But I mean, yeah, and that's people in rice farming areas drew the circles same size more often than not. And this has been replicated in India as well. China was a good case study because there's so much farming of both. Got to mix that, and you can quite easily control because there's like wheat farming areas occur in every part of the country, and rice farming areas also occur in every part of the country. Like if like it's easy to mess this up. Like if there was a correlation between rice farming and in poverty and stuff like that, then you might have a problem. But luckily they control. It was a very, very well done study. But it's just I think it's very interesting, and it's
that is really cool. That is really cool. And I suppose we can put a graph of that on screen, say, hey, look at this proof, right?
Mm-hmm. Some sociograms up there, maybe.
Right. Are we on for closing statements?
Pretty much, yeah. I guess other things I was going to talk about was like, I was maybe going to talk about plant intelligence and whatnot if I got onto it, but I don't think we need to. We've talked
I think
about
we're
that
good. I think
before
this
in
is
the
a good,
past, you know?
we're at that 45-minute mark.
Yeah,
But I
think I
suppose what
should
we need
leave
to
it
do
there.
is say wheat is a weed that came to us as much as we came to it. I joined the party. Rice, because it's so much more difficult to grow, actually has such a significant effect on our social standards that it changes the way that societies are formed and the values that societies have and the way that we view our parents and our friends and ourselves.
Yeah. We like to think of us having moved past an agricultural phase of our life, you know, as humans, as a species. We like to think that we've moved past that. But that's just a tiny, tiny blip. In the history of humans, we are, you know, every cell in your body was probably because you ate wheat, if you generalize. You know, like it's just
If I would
in the
go entirely
background of
that
everything.
far.
You'd be surprised how much of, I mean, even in a pizza, the calorie content is from the wheat. Let's be honest.
Yes.
Well, the tomatoes are just for flavoring. And
Well, it
that's
depends if it's
surprising.
deep
If you make
dish.
a bolognese, the wheat is like 90% of the calories in that.
Yeah. What was it? It was 60% of all human calories consumed are either wheat, soy, maize, or rice. Just total around the world every day. 60% is one of those 4 grains.
Yeah, it's a big deal. Think about it.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Substandard Model.
Or watching.
Or watching, as there's the new innovation that we've managed to bring to this podcast. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.